Hi. Okay, if you're following my first part of how I manifested my dream job, then you know that I had struggled and took on the Attorney General's office and a bill to make it a felony and got that killed. Killed a bill. Anyway, so I was able to work out of my home as a paralegal, providing independent paralegal services for the public, doing divorces and adoptions and wills and different legal things. And I'll have to tell you about one experience I had with working with a prisoner. Okay, we'll get to that in another video. Anyway, so it was very hard. It was very hard to start because it was very nerve-wracking every time I filed. It was no problem getting people because I ended up creating software. My husband, who was a computer programmer, college professor, teacher, he made all the child support guidelines available on software, and I took them all to the military bases, and they would use them, and I would go and instruct the JAG lawyers how the rules on Hawaii, because military members didn't really know what the jurisdiction of Hawaii and how long you had to live here and do all this stuff. So I went and gave little seminars to the JAG offices, and so that they all got to know me. And then I started putting little ads in the paper, the local military papers, saying that I provided the divorce paperwork for $100. I do their divorce. But I was a neutral third party just doing the paperwork, a neutral third party that they had to work. I would provide them information, and I would have this book when they would come. I would say, this is all legal information. I had a release that said, I'm not giving them advice, I'm giving them information. And I would have, where they could tailor make their own degree, divorce decree, and all that. And I explained the whole situation. The hard part was when I went down to the court to file the documents, because they were filing pro se, and I was acting like the messenger. And the court clerks thought that what I was doing was horrible and illegal, and they would go, what's your name? And they'd write my name down and say, if there's any problem with this paperwork, we're reporting you. And so I was always really nervous about that I knew my paperwork had to be perfect. So that went on for years. I mean, like 4-5 years. But what I had decided to do is, I went back to school. I'd already had several college degrees, but I decided, well, I'll get a paralegal degree too. And so when I went and got my paralegal degree, I got to know the college professor, and he thought what I was doing was wonderful. He thought that was a great alternative for people to have. And so what he did is, after I graduated and went through the program, in the future introductory classes, he would have paralegals from attorney's office, paralegals from healthcare, paralegals from different forms of paralegals, so that they could talk about what their life as a paralegal. And he wanted to include me. And so then he kind of gave me that fact that, and here's a person that's stepping out on their own, is independent, providing services directly to the public. And so in the classroom, people would kind of like, oh, wow, who'd ever thought that you could do that? Well, one time when I went down to court, now that I'd seen somebody in the class, one of the court clerks that set all the scheduling for the hearings, for all the divorce hearings, adoption hearings, and everything, recognized me from that little talk. And when she recognized me and had that coming out of, because she's taken the class now, and that gave me credibility. And all of a sudden, she became friends with me, friendly, because I'd had this mantle passed from the instructor that kind of validated that I was okay. And so we became friends, just over the counter type, always talking and stuff. And after about 8 months of that, she noticed that when I did the adoption paperwork, that people could go in and do an adoption, and all of their paperwork was in order. But if they came in with an attorney, or the attorney submitted the paperwork, it was always wrong. and incorrect, and it costs so much of their time to keep going back to the attorneys. So she went to a judge, and she said to the judge that I can't understand why the attorneys can't get the paperwork right, but this independent paralegal has figured it all out on her own, and all of her paperwork is right. So I was contacted by the judge to help write the adoption manual that's used by the attorneys for our state. Anyway, so that was quite, you go from one extreme of with the Attorney General trying to shut you down and make you a felon to a judge finally validating you and using my skills to write an adoption manual for the attorneys. So I was able to do that job until we retired and moved over here. I loved doing it. It was the best to me of being the legal, but being able to be a neutral third party and not the adversarial advocate, because an attorney doesn't have that option of being able to represent both people. He or she has to zealously represent one attorney. He or she has to zealously represent their client. And that makes for a confrontational system. But I was able to manifest that job, and it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage because I had the attorneys against me. I mean, really against me. One time, I felt that pressure, so I know. So anyway, if you imagine the job that you want, even if it doesn't exist, create it, see it. Don't let the fear stop you. I was amazed that I found the courage to take on the attorneys. You can do it too. If you want that job, create it. Bye.